Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Geek News Marathon Night, where we take a series from either the 80s or the 90s or something older that has a lot of episodes, and we dissect them episode by episode, but do so in groups because we are able to. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this, and joining me, of course, is my lovely wife, Andrea. Andrea, are you ready, after so long, to let it rip?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that really stank, Andrea. Come on.
I said yeah.
Sorry, Let It Rip has multiple definitions. So, we are back talking about Beyblade. It's actually been a while since we've been able to do it just because of how busy both the end of 2023 ended up as well as the beginning of 2024 ended up. And we'd rather not talk about it. It's too much. It's too haunting to go over. So, let's just go ahead and get right back into it, which... I mean, Andrea, do I need to do a refresher course on anything about this?
No.
It's tops that work like Pokeballs, that have beasts in them, that are made of bits, and they fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. And also, just a recap. So we were in the middle of the Asian tournament? I'm trying to remember. Was it a tournament or a qualifier?
I thought it was just a tournament.
I think it was just an Asian tournament. So at that point, we're starting things off with episode 13, Crouching Lion, Hidden Tiger. Gee, I wonder what hit film came out around this time. Huh. So this is basically the starting up of the quarterfinals or the top 8, where we have the kind of the 8 teams set up, and that'll eventually end up in the what we're guessing is going to be the White Tigers versus the Blade Breakers. Hey, wait, I said it right. Holy crap. I was going to say, for a while there, I might have to make a collection of me saying Beyblade wrong. Because, you know, I keep on saying Beyblade and all that. So we have our first round in the quarterfinals. That would be it, right? Yeah, that'd be 8 teams. The semifinals would be 4 teams. So the first match of the quarterfinals is going to be the White Tigers facing off against, and I didn't even hear their name in there, and thankfully the episode description has it, the Spin Shepherds, which is appropriate considering that all of their Beyblades are lined with wool like sheep. I like that team name. You know what? I'm gonna give that a 5 out of 5. That's pretty freaking spot on, right?
The Spin Shepherds?
The Spin Shepherds, yeah. That's appropriate. So this is actually a good one because now all the teams are basically set up together. And this actually allows, even though Ray kind of knows the team breakdown of the White Tigers, this allows for Kai. Kai probably already knows, but like Max and Tyson don't. And so we get to see what the White Tigers are capable of. And we don't need to necessarily see all of them because we already knew Kenny. Kenny had the monkey kung fu Beyblade. So at that point we already had him, but we didn't really have and we knew about Galax with Mariah, but we didn't really know anything about
Gary.
Gary. I keep on wanting to say other names. And Lee. We didn't really know their makeup. So this actually helps us out because the first one that we get to see, and this is why I mess up the name, because the actual Japanese name is Gao, and Gao actually sounds a lot better than Gary. And I know why they did it, guys. Don't send me messages. I get it.
It's because
it's dumbass American translation, all right? But Gary goes up against the member called Bobby, and this is where we ultimately learn about, like, they're all of their Beyblades are lined with wool, which I would think would slow them down, but I guess not. And we also get to learn about Gary's Beyblade, which actually does have a bit beast called Galzy? Or is it Galza? I think it's Galzy. It's basically Galzy. It's a grizzly bear. So at that point, we get to see them fight, and apparently Gary has an issue where if he... Maybe you got this better than I did. If he eats too much, he can't... or is it if he eats too little, he can't concentrate on Beyblading? I think it's too much, right?
Too much because it wasn't even...
Yeah, because he was dealing with indigestion, right? So we found out that that's kind of his weakness, is like if he eats too much, and apparently they had a big breakfast buffet.
Yeah, because didn't Mariah say, you know better than to eat? So
I know she said you know better to eat. I just couldn't remember if it was too much or too little. And I guess it would be too much at that point. So Gary, he does well. Like, he ultimately wins, but he does have a bit of an issue, and it actually does look like Bobby could possibly win it. But I think this is a good thing just to kind of point out that, yes, you know, the White Tigers have weaknesses, kind of thing. So I did actually like that concept. We then go into the second match, which is up against Doug. It's going to be Mariah up against Doug. And we already knew about Galax, but this gives us a better showcase of what Galax and Mariah are capable of. And, oh, by the way, is this the one that was in the Great Wall of China dome?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, we have this big Hot Wheels-looking model of the Great Wall of China. It's just getting destroyed this entire time. I feel bad for the people who made this, because, like, they probably put a lot of time and effort, and in a matter of seconds, their entire Great Wall of China is just destroyed. But Mariah basically hands Doug his ass. But then we go to the final match, which is Lee up against... did we even know what the guy's name was?
I don't remember.
I don't think they ever told us. And also, really quick, if people are wondering if, you know, we're missing out on Bit Beast or whatever, no, the whole gimmick of the Spin Shepherds was that they all were lined with wool. So, like, no Bit Beasts or anything like that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of...
I think we saw Galsy in, like, a little bit of his match, and Galax came out, but that's it. There wasn't, like, an opposing Bit Beast.
You don't see too many.
Side.
You don't see too many of the the opposite. You know, like the
yes
having Bit Beast, except for like main important characters.
Mm-hmm. And so like for people who are like, oh, you're totally missing. No, the gimmick of the Spin Shepherds was that their Beyblades were lined with wool, which was supposed to be a weakness to power. I guess power-based Beyblades, but it really didn't matter in this case. Although I'm trying to remember. Actually, you know what? I think Gary might have lost his, but again, they just tried to explain it away with him being with his tummy bothering him. But Lee goes up, and again, I don't think we actually learn what his opponent's name was. But when they go up against each other, we learn of Lee's Bit Beast Galleon, and it turns out that his Bit Beast is actually able to do the Tiger Claw attack that Ray can do with Trigger, and so that apparently like triggers Ray a little bit on because it's a new development for Lee, and this kind of spawns into us going into the backstory between Lee and Ray. And we already kind of knew this, but they all basically grew up together in the same like remote Chinese village.
Mm-hmm.
The thing we didn't know was that apparently Trigger, the white tiger, was actually an heirloom of Lee's family. And for some reason, Lee's grandfather decided to give Trigger to Ray instead of Lee. And Lee was okay with it. You know, he did the whole Yugi Joey thing. He was like, you'll do good things. And then when Ray decided to leave, he then was pissed about it and decided that he was going to retake the white tiger and bring it back to the village, kind of thing. He then kind of switches into this whole pursuit of power kind of thing. And then that all of that ends up in a victory for Team White Tiger. And then we do go into a little bit of, let's see, do we actually go into the next? No, we start up do we start it up? I can't remember. Yeah, no, actually we do. We actually go into the next match, which is up against the Charming Princes, or rather the dudes in suspenders. To which the Blade, and that's up against the Blade Breakers, so that's their opponent, and they go up against oh geez, I want to say it was Max, Ray, and Tyson that ultimately go up against them, because Kai, for some reason, we'll find out later, he's the alternate for the team, but he's just kind of sitting there and judging everybody, because that's what Kai does, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those go well, including the fact that the second Ray immediately goes to face his opponent. We all think that, Drigger's not going to come back. Spoiler alert, it did come back. It's almost like I could have called that.
It just magically comes back.
It just magically comes back, and then they show them a real Tiger Claw attack. So we know for guaranteed that the White Tigers and the Blade Breakers are going to be going on into the next round. But we also have 2 other teams for them to take on. So that is episode 13. What did the episode do right? What did it do wrong, Andrea? It really didn't do anything wrong. It was just it was a fast episode. And actually, one of the pros that I haven't mentioned up until this point is the soundtrack for this series is actually a lot better than I remember it being. It actually is giving me a lot of flashbacks to Power Rangers, and the fact that, like, in the first 3 seasons, they had Ron Wasserman just come up with a bunch of different tracks, and they would play during putty attacks and stuff like that, and it really reminded me of that, and it's, like, really banging music. Mm-hmm. What would be a positive for you?
I just liked some of the battles. It was
okay.
And the unique styles of what people, what the opponents would use.
Yeah, even the Charming Princes didn't really have a unique gimmick. They just had, like, regular run-of-the-mill Beyblades.
Yeah, so. But their Beyblades seemed like they had, like, extensions added to it or something.
Extensions here and there, but not, like, game-breakingly game-changing in any way. Which kind of makes me wonder, like, how, like, at least with the Spin Shepherds, they had a gimmick that I could see carried them to the quarterfinals. The Charming Princes, and I'm also going to say this about the next match that the Blade Breakers have, I kind of wondered how you even got to the quarterfinals in the first place, but that's just me. And yeah, there's not really anything negative with this, because we got a bunch of Beyblade matches out of it, so that works out. So out of 5, what would you rate Crouching Lion, Hidden Tiger? 4?
Yeah, 4.
4. Me. Pretty action packed, because they had to get a couple of rounds out. So I'll be honest with that. So then at that point we go to episode 14. The race is on. So this actually goes into the semifinals, where we will have one more match between the White Tigers and the Blade Breakers before the finals, where we know that they will ultimately meet up, right? Mm-hmm. And in the morning of the semifinals, Tyson apparently has problems waking up. And so Ray decides to stay with them because Ray decided that the best way to wake him up was to give him a hot pepper. And it only woke him up for like 5 seconds. And then he went right back.
Yeah, it was just funny.
I don't believe that for a second. 10 minutes later, explosive diarrhea. All right.
Well, it was just funny, him just eating the pepper and asleep. It's like, oh,
yep.
Really?
Yep. So ultimately what happens is Max, Kai, and Mr. Dickinson?
Yeah.
They go to the semifinals ahead of time. Ray stays with Tyson and tries to get him awake, and then they start making their way. Except on their way, Ray and Tyson, while making their way up to it, there is a mysterious landslide that has happened, and now it looks like Ray and Tyson may not make it to the semifinals, which would ultimately result in the Blade Breakers being disqualified. So we'll kind of split this story up a little bit, but to make it go a little bit quicker, Ray and Tyson eventually decide that they're going to try and just make their way straight up the mountain to get up to the arena. And so at that point, they start making their way, and they're basically antagonizing each other each step of the way, just like who's chicken. Or no, that Ray used chicken against Tyson, and then ultimately Ray gets injured by, and Andrea, you're gonna have to join me in gasping, spraining his ankle. Oh, I'm sorry, twisting his ankle. Yeah, because that was never going to happen. And so Tyson then has to carry Ray up the rest of the way to the arena. That's pretty much their story. All right. Then we cut to Kai and Max, and Kenny apparently has been working most of the night on getting giving Max a new Beyblade that is more defensively minded and optimized for Drasil. So at that point, Max is super excited about that, and they are ready to go, but they've noticed that Ray and Tyson are taking forever. So I believe Max was the first round, right?
Yeah, he was the first round.
And who was his...
Kai was the second.
No. Who was his opponent's? What was his opponent's name? I want to say it was Sean. See, this is what I'm going to get into. But Max decides to go first, and he goes up against, I think, what is the strongest player on his opposing team. And the gimmick of this team, I think they were supposed to be Polynesian, because they kind of had that, that Pacific Islander kind of look. But not only that, apparently all of their Beyblades were homemade and made out of wood. So the fact that they were spinning is so like they look broken down, right? They all had cracks and dents and everything like that. It almost made it look like just launching them would have caused them to explode in flames. But Max takes on their boss, and this is where we have a little bit of a kerfuffle in the match, because apparently, since Max is a little worried about his teammates not being there, he starts pushing things out, trying to give time for his teammates to get here. And Sean takes offense to this because apparently Max was disrespecting him. I take serious problems with. I know why they went with this, because they wanted to show like Max wasn't being prideful or whatever, but it was pretty clear on Max's face the whole time that he was basically trying to buy time for his teammates. Right?
Yeah.
He wasn't like folding his arms and going, to Sean. He was just basically trying to buy time for Tyson and Ray to get there. And so at that point, of course, Max feels bad about it, and he starts fighting for real because he wants to respect. Even Kai came out and chastised Max. And again, you guys are all douchebags. I think he was doing the nice thing. He was trying to get his team there.
Yeah. And
so he starts fighting for real, which then causes Sean to use his Beyblade's big kahuna attack, which is like, I'm going to argue that Sean is probably the strongest fighter on that team. And so they probably should have saved him for later, but no, he got to face off against Max. And even after the big kahuna attack, which apparently immersed the entire arena in water that we never explain where it came from.
It just magically.
And then it magically disappears. Max still wins because he pulls out Drasil and wins. And it's never explained how the water came out of nowhere. And for some reason, Sean's Beyblade just erupts in flames. I didn't know. I didn't see. Okay, fine. I made that up. But it should have happened. All right. Considering the amount of damage that poor little Beyblade took. So, yeah. So we have a win in Max's favor. And this is where the argument about him not being respectful to Sean came back to bite him in the ass. Because this is when they remind them that, oh yeah, your teammates aren't here. You have 5 minutes or you forfeit. Gee, it's almost like Max was thinking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why they gave him crap. Yeah, he was disrespecting Sean. Sure, whatever. But it's all right, everybody. Because Kai, in his overwhelming compassion, decides to take the rod out of his ass. And he battles in the second match and just destroys the next person, because the next two Beybladers on this team, they don't have special attacks. They don't have Bit Beasts. They have Beyblades that are just as broken down as Sean's. So yeah, obviously that was not a problem for Dronzer in the slightest. But then we again are reminded that your other teammates still haven't gotten here. Oh yeah, by the way, you have 15 seconds to have your teammates show up. And that's when Tyson shows up in the end, sweating buckets and carrying Ray into the arena. And that's pretty much this episode. So, thoughts on this episode? What did it do right, Andrea?
I mean, there was a lot of some humor that I just enjoyed. And
there was one other thing I forgot to mention. We also, because Mariah and later Kenny are watching this match to see how they do, we then find out that the landslide, spoiler, nobody saw this coming, was caused by Kenny.
Of course.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, there was some great humor to some of the...
Or not Kenny, Kevin. Kevin's the name of the monkey.
Okay. There was just some funny moments, and I just loved the whole Ray and Tyson trying to get to the match and trying to find every means to get there.
I mean, out of the two storylines, which was probably the more entertaining? Max and Kai or Tyson and Ray?
I mean, I liked the matches, but I think I enjoyed more I
kind of agree with you.
With Tyson and Ray, because they're like arguing
because they're being kids. They're just like, no, you're chicken. Oh no, I twisted my ankle. Oh, you might as well leave me, Tyson. I'm dead.
No.
There's no way I'm getting back for this. Screw that, Ray. I'm bringing you. We're not skipping leg day today. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that was the better story.
It was just more entertaining.
Well, it just had that kid kind of concept of, I'm not stupid, you're stupid. Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. I'm not saying that Max and Kai was bad, but I will say that the whole Max being disrespectful to Sean was really dumb. Because I think even Sean would have been smart enough to say, oh yeah, your teammate isn't here, so you're delaying things. And so he probably then could have not said, well, you're disrespecting me because of that. You're disrespecting me because you're worried that you're going to have to forfeit. Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. That would have been a better explanation. Okay, so is there any other negatives that you want to bring up?
I just don't understand why they just, Ray and Tyson didn't just get on the bus, even
they
if
were
Tyson...
already there.
I mean... Why would they want to go later and stuff?
Look, Mr. Dickinson's in his 60s, but are you telling me he couldn't have helped carry Tyson?
I mean, Ray could have even carried Tyson.
Well, yeah, the three of them could have done it.
They could have put him on the bus.
But he was out of bed and dressed.
Yeah, so why are you showing up later?
But the fact that Tyson was dressed brings... really weird, really weird thoughts to my brain now. He was mysteriously dressed, which means that Ray had to have dressed him.
And why is Kevin being a nuisance when he's trying to find ways to stall their team?
I think I came up with a better explanation. I came up with a better explanation because somebody decided to also feed Kevin a bell pepper in the morning, and so his explosive diarrhea was what caused the landslide in the first place. You guys can tell me in the comment section whether I'm right or wrong. But my one negative, and this is going to sound silly because I've already made the argument that the whole you're disrespecting me is dumb. But really, Ray, feeding him a bell pepper is supposed to wake him up? If you fed me a bell pepper, I'd be running to the bathroom. All right? You wouldn't get me the rest of the day. Screw the semifinals. I'd be in the bathroom all day. I'd be like, because we're talking big honking red pepper. So that's my negative, but it's only just, I don't hate it because it also lended into that whole I'm not stupid, you're stupid plot line. So out of 5, what would we give the races on?
Probably 3.5.
2. And the only reason I'm giving it a 2 is because of the whole you're disrespecting me argument. Okay, so then we go into episode 15, going for the gold. So this is where we have it is the Asian qualifying tournament. So this is where the semifinals are done. Because also in the previous episode, Tyson faced the last one. Spoiler, destroyed him. And actually, I forgot to mention this part because I thought that they finished in this episode, but we actually get an act of kindness because Max decides to give his old Beyblade to Sean. Because, they had all the rundown Beyblades, so he gives his old Beyblade to Sean. That was kind of cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this. The Heart of the Cards Award goes to Max for last episode for giving his old Beyblade to Sean. That was kind of nice. But anyway, back into this. So now we're in the finals. Now we're having the first matches between the White Tigers and the Blade Breakers. And in this one, we have first things first going up against, or Max going up against Gary. And also, and this is another thing that just kind of irritates me, and I'm just going to put it out here. One of the reasons we haven't seen Kai in previous matches is because apparently he is the alternate for the Blade Breakers. Maybe I'm the only one thinking this, but if you had the Japan World Champ on your team, would you put him as an alternate?
I don't see why they can't even
if it was me, Tyson, Ray, and Kai would all be the main team. And this is not me saying anything against Max. Max would be the alternate, but that's because of his Beyblade style, which is more defensive. So at that point, if we had to play a longer game, then we could bring him in. But the fact that all three, the other ones are attack based, then I would put all three. But I mean, am I wrong about that?
I just don't know why, they wouldn't rotate,
Right.
Everyone...
And Kai made it basically sound like, well, I shouldn't be facing anybody. I'm the Japanese champion. BS, you're representing the country now.
It's like, well, why are you there then if you're not...
Right. Well, I mean, obviously he's just there to have a rod up his ass. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Max versus Gary. And Gary, once again, has the indigestion problem. And so now, this is the other thing, too. We are now in best 2 out of 3 again for matches. And so the first round with Max and Gary goes pretty well for Max. Max wins the first round. It looks like Gary is basically holding back and is not as focused as he could have been. And this I think this ultimately hurts Max because he kind of becomes a little cocky because of it. But what's funny is that right after this loss, everybody's mad at Gary, and Gary is getting excited. He's actually getting happy, and Lee immedially backs off. Lee's like, I know that face. And Kevin is still, sorry, I have to keep doing it. Kevin is like, what are you doing, Gary? And Lee's like, leave him alone. He's into it now. And so the second round goes off and Gary wins it whole-handedly. And I think this is the one where the arena that they're in is kind of like the arena that Max and Kai faced off in, except the bottom is like a glass satellite dish or like a easily breakable material. And because Gary comes out full force, he decides to have his Beyblade just kind of bouncing around it and making these big ass holes in the dish, in the lower dish. And so that ultimately ends up in destroying the bottom part, which affects Max's Beyblade, and he loses the second round because of it. Then we have the third round, which is now Max is kind of putting up his usual defenses because now Gary's into it, and now we're seeing the powerhouse that Gary actually can be. But sadly, it isn't enough, and Gary does even more destruction and makes Max lose. In fact, he basically breaks the entire dish apart in the third round, and Max has to go in through the broken tatters and find Drasil out of it. So unfortunately, first match goes to Gary for the White Tigers. So what do you have to? So that's this episode roughly. What do you think this episode did right?
I don't have much to say on it really, but
Do you think it did anything wrong?
no.
I actually do like it a little bit because it actually gave a character flaw to Max. Max has always been like this overly optimistic character.
That's true.
And then they showed that his arrogance could be his undoing. Because as soon as we saw, I always want to say Max, but when we saw Gary was really getting into it and his Galsy was coming out to destroy the arena, then we knew that it was going to be a bigger problem.
That's true.
And this actually would have, in my head, this was the time where I was screaming, this is why Max is the alternate, because you have Galsy, which is supposed to be all out attack. And obviously they were probably going to use Mariah. She's all out attack. And Lee is probably also all out attack. You needed to have all of your attackers in this one. And ultimately what should have happened, as far as I'm concerned, is it probably should have been Gary versus Tyson because of the storm attack and basically trying to overwhelm Galsy, because that was Galsy's strategy, was overwhelming Max with brute force. So instead you put him in the middle of the fucking hurricane kind of thing. Pardon my French, but like you put him in the middle of the hurricane and see if he survives.
Well, it was just interesting that, when they were figuring out the strategy of who's going to be matched up against each other. And
and that's going to be one of my complaints with this is like the matchups are not right.
and not to mention it's like it almost looked like if Kai wanted to participate facing against the White Tigers, but he's like, okay, whatever, you can do whatever you want.
Right. I actually think that was a bad decision, and they should have pulled Max back. I'm not saying when I say that I'm not saying Max is a bad Beyblader or anything like that, but you had raw attack, which if they brought in Kevin, then Max would have been a good fit, because Max could have played the defensive game and basically played against Kevin, and that would have been a good fit. But in this case, and I'll die on this hill, Tyson should have faced off against Gary, because I think he would have been a much better fit for it. Just because you had the overwhelming strength aspect, now you put the overwhelming strength against the overwhelming storm and see who comes out. And the cool part is that out of that matchup, Tyson doesn't have to win. You could have Gary win. It's just the first round, right? So at that point, that's kind of my positives and negatives. Is like I ultimately liked it, but I don't think they picked a good team here. Or at least a good team setup for the White Tigers so far. Out of 5, what would you give Going for the Gold?
I'd probably give it a 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5, 4. It was a good matchup. It's just I already kind of knew that this was probably going to go in Gary's favor. Weakness and all. But I actually did like the fact that, after the weakness, Gary started getting invested. So like that actually... That made me go, okay, well, this is going to be a good loss now. Like, it's going to feel good. Then we move to episode 16, My Enemy, My Friend, which this is the second round, and this is once again a bad pick because all of this has been set up for a different kind of matchup. We have Ray facing off against Mariah. Let me tell you guys why this is a bad matchup. I also forgot to mention this. In episode 13, we also, along with the backstory, a bet is made that whomever wins the finals gets the White Tiger Bit Beast. Because that's Lee's goal here, right? He wants to reclaim his family heirloom. And so if he wins, he gets the White Tiger. So at that point, why wouldn't you have Ray facing off against Lee?
Who knows?
It's his White Tiger up against the family who owns it. Why wouldn't you do that? But instead, they decided to do Ray versus Mariah, when in reality, I think Kai versus Mariah would have been a much better fight.
That would have been probably a much more...
And I was even saying it while we were watching, and you were agreeing with me. Like, Kai versus Mariah, that would have been actually a really good fight. and they instead decided to go this route. And it's basically a glimpse into their past where we learn more about how close-knit friends they all are. Ray and Mariah have been Beyblading since they were little kids, and even Ray has like kind of taught Mariah how to be a Beyblader. Apparently, we also learn in the middle of this that both Ray and Mariah have fan clubs, and apparently they were at odds with each other during the whole fight in the arena. And it's basically just kind of a back and forth where they just kind of realize their rivalry and that they want to stay friends and everything like that. And as this is going on, we're also starting to see some irritation show up on Lee's face. Like, he's kind of getting that too. But ultimately, a winner has to be decided, and it goes to Ray. Mm-hmm. But it was a hard-fought fight, even I'll admit that. And I actually like the fact that they kind of hinted that maybe their friendship escalated a little bit because of that. Because something tells me, you remember how Mariah was basically saying, do you want to hang out later in the English? I wonder if in the Japanese subtitles, it was like, do you want to go on a date later? Kind of thing. I think the relationship kind of escalated there.
And you gotta love it. This is like one of those episodes where it's like they're not like, feeling like it's like a rivalry. It's more like we're playing around and having fun. And
whereas I think it would have, like, I'm not saying that the friendship angle isn't a good thing, but the friendship angle should have been done next match with Ray and Lee, because we already had the episode with Ray and Mariah where they had already realized these. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it actually might have been a better matchup for Kai and Mariah to go up against each other, both Beybladers who have something to prove. So they might have actually been able to gain some kind of mutual respect from each other. And instead they went this direction. And the episode ends with Lee chastising Mariah about having fun out there and that it should be about winning. So this is also kind of teasing about where Lee's mindset is. He's not interested in having fun anymore, which is why they all started in the first place. He is interested in winning because he wants the White Tiger back. So, what did this episode do right? What did it do wrong? What did it do wrong? The fan clubs. The fan clubs were entirely unnecessary. Especially in the fact that the fan club for Mariah was a bunch of boys who apparently all dressed up in their Sunday best, which I would argue not gonna happen. And the Ray fan club was a bunch of women in like their 30s and 40s. which is creepy all on its own. So yeah, that's a negative. The fan clubs were an absolute negative there. What did this episode do right? What did it do wrong, Andrea?
You just gotta love those fan clubs, which are...
No, I don't. No, I don't, actually. I can be creeped out by them.
Yeah, no. It just kind of reminds you of some of those. It's like, we don't want this match to end. We want it to go on forever.
Yeah, they eventually kind of got into that point, yeah. Which made it all creepier. But no, the match itself was actually a really good positive for this, especially since it was the arena that they were in was like a recreation of the Forbidden City. So I almost expected the tops to just be bouncing back and forth like a wushu film, but they didn't do that.
And then you gotta just love that whole thing about Ray like getting so distracted and losing and
wait, Mariah's like a girl or something. That's basically what was happening.
It's like, I can't.
That's why I'm saying I want to see the subtitles for this, because I wonder if like they went, do you want to go on a date sometime? Instead of like, do you want to go hang out? Because like that's just a friend thing, but like you want to go on a date, that implies something else.
But it's like, I can't beat Mariah.
I can't do it. She's like a girl or something.
And Mariah's like, will you just stop that? And just
oh yeah, because like early on he was disrespecting her because he was pulling his punches because Mariah's like a girl or something. Yeah, that part. There's a good reason I forgot about that part.
He's like, I want you to take it seriously. And
But keep in mind, Ray's like 10 or 11 at this point. Maybe he's 12. So, in his defense, that's probably why. But also, he grew up with her. So, he wanted to be nice. So, I'll give that. But, any other positives or negatives we want to mention?
Nope.
I don't think so. So out of 5, what would we give My Enemy, My Friend? 3, right down the middle. It was a good match, but there was enough things distracting from the match, especially in the fact that it shouldn't have been Ray versus Mariah. Right down the middle.
And another thing about it is, like, if Kai was concerned about Ray going up against Mariah, why didn't he just substitute in?
What they really should have done was, like, Kai steps in and goes, well, this is an easy victory. And then the whole, you shouldn't hold back because I'm a girl would have made a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. And Kai could have been humbled, which none of us are against Kai having some humble pie. He's a little full of himself. So that would have worked a lot better. But again, this goes to the argument. It should have been Kai versus Mariah. Even Tyson versus Mariah would have been a good one. Like, if you still wanted to keep Gary versus Max and then you had Tyson versus Mariah, that still would have been a better matchup. Because then at that point, it could have been like the fight for Ray. Because she wants Ray back on the White Tigers and he's his friend and he wants to keep him on the Blade Breakers. This was just a bad matchup. That's what I'm saying. 3, down the middle. Out of 5, what would you give it?
Just a 3.
Right. And so out of this, that is all of the episodes that we have. So thank you guys so much for joining us. When we come back, it's going to be episodes 17 through 20 of Beyblade Season 1. And if you like what you're hearing, make sure to leave a like down as well as on the button below, as well as subscribe to the channel. If you like what we're doing here, it definitely helps us out with YouTube algorithms and stuff. Or you can support us on podcasting platforms like Amazon Podcast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Player.fm, as well as Spotify. You can check it out there, as well as being able to, if you have a disagreement with how the matches were set up or our problems with it, leave a comment down below. We'll have that discussion. But until then, we will see you guys next time for the next episode of Geek News Marathon Night, Beyblade Season 1. Until then, let it rip, yo.